Yes,
Alright. Well, let's get started, you guys. I need you guys in your seats. I need your notebook out. I want you on page 78 and 79. We started setting it up yesterday. It should look something like this at the first half. Okay? This is page 79. Here, I actually have a big sticky note for us since we're used to seeing those, you know. There we go. That's what you get there. So 79 is what yours should be on right now. Okay? Now, before we get any further on this, let's look at the question for today. We're asking what types of information can we get from fossils? So first we should kind of identify what a fossil is. There's different types of fossils. All right? We have, what types of fossils do you think exist out there? What can we find in the dirt, Shams? Dinosaur fossils. So what do you think would be left behind by a dinosaur? Bones, feces, poop. Okay. Maybe an egg. Okay. What else? So you might find a tusk or some kind of bone or something like that. So from Ice Age, maybe they're frozen in the rocks, in the ice, I mean. That could happen. That's happened actually a few times. We found some good stuff. What was it? Mosquitoes. Like the whole thing, huh? How do they get preserved?
By a liquid, tree sap.
Good. Tree sap. So tree sap can harden around the animal and then preserve it. That's actually called amber. When it hardens, it's a hard stone. There you go. A leaf. So sometimes things can leave an imprint. So it was there before, and then the leaf kind of broke apart, but it left its shape in between something. So my kids are all on some good stuff. How would these things get left behind? How do they get preserved and not fall apart after millions of years or thousands of years?
Maybe it died, maybe like it fell off of the tree, or maybe someone planted it.
Someone planted it there? Okay. What's that?
By rock.
By rocks?
It got pushed down by the earth.
Perfect. So rocks fell on top of the animal and they got pushed down and then sealed up. Andres?
Pressure?
Pressure? Squeezing it? Yeah, keeps it all together so there's nothing blown in, no erosion's happening. Good. Asa?
Sharks?
Sharks. What do they leave behind? Teeth.
Like a little shark.
That's it, huh? That's all we have from the shark is the tooth because everything else does what? Decomposes. Good word, you guys. Good word. All right. Now, there's two things that I can do here. We could watch a brain pop video on fossils. It's short, but I think that you guys just hit everything on the head from the video. You've got body fossils preserved in things like ice, tar pits, or amber, like tree sap. You've got imprints of leaves that can be left behind. Sometimes things get squeezed together and preserved that way. Sometimes a cast can be made. So sometimes there's a shell, and it got stuck in between the mud or whatever, and then that shell broke apart over time. But water got in there and left minerals behind and filled up what it would have looked like. So you might find a fossil that's not actually the actual piece, but it's like a remake of it. So that happens. That's called a cast fossil. Yes?
I went to a bathroom and didn't collect it.
I'll take it. From yesterday?
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, I want you guys to think about fossils and what are some things that we can be told about the past from fossils. I want you to write down just two things. Everybody writes two things down. Hopefully they're all different and we can figure out a whole list of things that can be figured out from the leftover remains or from fossils. What can we learn about the past when we find fossils? What can they tell us? Write it down. Write two things down. Oh, you guys already wrote some yesterday. Good. I looked at someone's notebook and it was blank. So, cool. What types of animals were back one day, back in the day? Okay. So that's cool. We can just make a little list together. So, what are some things that you guys wrote down yesterday?
What were the habitats?
Okay, habitat. Good. You guys don't need to write any of this, or you could list a couple of these if you want. Habitat. Okay. Savannah? What type of animal? So we could identify. So the type of animal. What else? Andres?
We can identify what they ate.
Okay. What they ate. by looking at their feces. We'll write feces instead of poop. Poop's more fun, right? So Lisa, how old it was. So age. Not only the age, but when it lived. How about kind of the time period of when it lived? Time period. What else?
The looks.
The shape, the looks. Okay. Chance?
Maybe the temperature.
The temperature. Maybe we know the region of where it was at, found at.
Yeah, because like not to where anything, but that's
Good. You can make a lot of assumptions based on the climate. Awesome. One more. Asa.
What were their predators? Their predators, like what did they attack?
Okay. What kind of feeder they were? Were they predators? Maybe their teeth would tell us that they were like predator meat eaters or something like that. Okay, so maybe we'll write down predator
Herbivores.
or prey. And last one, Jose?
The blood type.
Blood type. Maybe we find some biological evidence left behind. Okay, so there has been recoverance of DNA on some of these animals, and they can tell what color their skin might have been. They find fragments of their genetic information. So maybe, what did you say again? How can I put it?
Blood.
Okay, so blood type. Maybe DNA left over. Okay, those are all really good. I appreciate you guys giving me all those information, all those ideas. Okay, now today's all about fossilized footprints. Okay, so we're going to be looking at footprints today. All right, we're going to do two things. We're going to have observations, and then we're going to make inferences from our observations. Can anybody tell me how these two words are different? Because a lot of the times we jump right to the inference without even thinking about what we observed. Shams, what are observations?
Like things that you see.
Things that you see. All right. I like that. Can you guys all make a T-chart real quick? Maybe about 6 lines down. We'll add observations on the left and then inferences on the right. You could do that below your initial idea from yesterday. So just make a T-chart. We're just going to divide the paper real quick into 2 different areas. And Shem set it off. So he said observations involve seeing things using our 5 senses. All right. Now I think you guys know what they are, so you don't need to write them down. But something I would like you to jot down is under observations. You can make a note that it's. That's going to be like weird. That we use our 5 senses. Okay, we've got sight, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Which one of these 5 should we probably not do as often as the other 4? Yeah, you don't want to go around licking things. That would be kind of weird. So it might get you sick. Okay. So 5 senses are used. Good. When we make observations, yeah, here. So see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Now, when we make observations, we can do it in 2 ways. We can express what we saw, or heard, or smelled, or tasted, or touched, using words to describe it. Like red or blue or round or square. You can use words to describe what we see or hear. And we can also use, actually those are called qualitative, but we can also use numbers to describe how many something was, how tall something was, how deep is something, how much did they weigh. Okay, so we have quantitative and we have qualitative. I want you to make a note of those 2 because we're going to use them today. If you look at the root of the 2 words, quantitative, quantity, someone said, what's the quantity of, that glass of milk? I guess you could measure it. Qualitative is qualities. Qualities of something would be words. Express the quality of something. It's good or bad, tall or short. Now, lastly about observations is when you get old like myself, your 5 senses don't work quite as crispy and clear as they used to.
What's that?
Exactly. I rest my case. So, what do we use to try to heighten our senses? What can we use? Try to make our senses a little bit more valuable or a little bit more emphasized.
Use glasses.
Glasses, good. So glasses would be a form of good. Hearing aids, yeah. So that might help us hear from far away. Or we could use specific tools like those ones in the back.
No?
Microscopes to zoom in on things, or telescopes to see far away. We call those tools. Or we could even use the internet to learn information. So technology can be helpful too when making observations. So that would kind of sum up what we're looking at today. We're going to use our senses. We're going to record quantitative and qualitative. And technology and tools, that'll be limited. We'll be using just our observations. So what are inferences? If this is observations, these are things that describe stuff. What is an inference? It's an inference, Shan.
A guess.
A guess? I like that. Okay, can we build off that? A guess, a what? An estimate? Okay.
Educated.
Educated estimate. So you get educated based on your observations. So one way we could put it, a hypothesis. Good. That's a top way to put it. An educated guess, a hypothesis. You're basically putting together all the available observations. You're making a sound judgment. Now I wrote it in two ways. You can just write it however you think you want to put it in your own words. But what you can explain based on your observations. What can be explained based on what you saw and recorded. So let's say you had a substitute who walks in, got a cane, hair's dark or gray, maybe some spectacles on the end of his nose. Those are things you observed. What would you infer about that gentleman or that lady? He's older. You know, maybe old, maybe he's experienced, maybe there was once a teacher, has a lot of wisdom. So those are things you can put together based on an observation. Right? We all clear? Your facts, and then your facts paint a picture for you. That's what we're going to do today. All right, we're going to look at a fossilized set of footprints that were uncovered by some paleontologists like you guys. So let's say we're out on the field, and we decided that we noticed something, and we started to uncover it. We might use some little brushes to try to uncover and unfold what we see. We're going to take a look at some evidence. We're going to observe it, and then we're going to write an inference based on it. So can you guys all go to the bottom half of your paper? You still writing?
No.
So go to the bottom half of your paper and just make 3 columns. I know you just made a two chart column, but just you can separate it, draw a line, and we're going to make 3 columns right here. One of them is inferences on the right, observations in the middle, and then our evidence. Yes?
Switch the page.
You can switch the page if you ran out of room. Okay? Make sure you leave enough room at the bottom to write me a little conclusion, but yeah, you could use page 78. I got a sticky note for that if you want to do that. So you could act like this is page 78.
Oh.
Or 70. We've got our evidence. Based on our evidence, we're going to have a little observation, or 2 or 3 or 5, depending on what we see. And then we'll draw a conclusion, some kind of inference based on what we saw. So when you do these, I want you to handle it as, the first thing I want you to do is maybe do a quick sketch. Okay. And the second thing, maybe list. You don't need to write this down, I'll just give you good guidance. List the facts. Okay. Remember to use numbers and also use words. And then lastly, draw a conclusion. Okay? Okay, so the reason I have it in those steps is because you don't want to make an inference before you know all the facts. Okay? And you don't know all the facts unless you really looked at the evidence. So let's start off real quick. Okay? So in your little first column, here's our first piece of evidence. Okay? So here's what we see. As scientists, we've uncovered a little fossil dig and we found all these footprints, and this is the pattern that we see. Now let me just blow it up real quick so we can all see it. This is going to be, I want you to sketch this in the evidence part. So this would go right here in the left-hand column, but I'm just going to put it in the middle so we can all see it. Here's evidence one. So draw it. I don't need you to draw every single footprint, but maybe you can use X's and O's. One is clearly smaller than the other. So just give me a little general idea of what you see. Some things to pay attention to. Do you see the gaps in between the feet for the larger footprints?
It looks like
These seem to be more uniform, so that might help us with our inferences later on. So quick sketch, take a minute. Yes, this will be put under your evidence.
Guess what X means?
Yeah, X's and O's worked. We did that in first period, and that worked just fine.
which one's the X? Right.
That just depends. So if you're going to draw X's and O's, maybe make your X's a lot bigger, because if you're doing these as the X, they're clearly bigger. So try to use proportions and stuff like that.
Which step right here?